but YouTube should be firing up. And so if I'm not mistaken, hey, we are live on all three for the weekly shred. My name is Jim Schultz, your tour guide this evening and every Thursday night at 8 o'clock. And I appreciate you guys for joining me tonight. I think I'm really going to make the next 20-25 minutes worthwhile for you. And so I'm just really, really thankful that you're here with me. We're going to talk about gaining muscle and losing fat, right? This is it. I mean, this is like the holy mecca of what we're trying to do as fitness enthusiasts, right? Like, this is absolutely what we would all prefer to do simultaneously. So we're going to spend 20-25 minutes and talk about, can you actually do that? But before we get into it, two real quick favors. Number one, if you've been following the weekly shred or following F Cubed or following my content, if you want to do me a huge solid, like a huge favor, man, it would mean the world to me if, on Twitter, on Facebook, on YouTube, wherever you're at right now, if you could share this or retweet this or tag a friend or whatever, it really helps me kind of get the message out there to a wider audience. So that would be huge. But then secondly, man, I'm pretty excited. I'm pretty excited because we have a free training coming up in early May. I have two slots, May 4th and May 5th. What I got for you guys are the 5 secrets to getting shredded. Straight from the bodybuilding stage, learn how to sandblast body fat off of your frame and sustain it. Well, most of it. And so I'm excited about this training, man, because, like, straight up. So, some of you guys know my story, man, right? Like, I grew up as a really big kid. I was made fun of. I was picked on. All those things, right? I've now been a competitive bodybuilder for about 20 years, which is crazy to think. And, after having made all the mistakes you could possibly make and having banged my head against the wall for many, many, many of those years, I think I've picked up a couple of things. And so what I'm going to do is I'm boiling this down to my 5 biggest secrets. So, you may not want to compete one day. You may just want to clean things up. You may just want to kind of reverse, the quarantine, the COVID-19 that you've put on for the last, 5 or 6 weeks. You may just want to get healthier. You may want to get completely sliced and diced, right? Whatever your goal is, if it's fat loss focused, then I think this training is going to help you. It's totally free, and I'm super excited about it. You can find the link to this guy down below in the description. So if you are on it doesn't matter where you are, Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, it is either in the tweet or in the description. You can sign up today. Like I said, there are 2 slots available in early May, and this is the first time that I'm announcing it, so I'm super pumped. But without further ado, man, let's get into tonight's shred. So 4 ways to gain muscle while losing fat. Is this a ridiculous myth, or is this a realistic expectations? It's kind of funny. It's a little bit it's a little I don't want to say misleading, because that sounds like I'm trying to manipulate you, which I'm not. But it's a little bit wrong for me to say 4 ways. It would actually be more correct, as you're going to see tonight, to say 4 circumstances or 4 scenarios, right? But, titling the shred 4 circumstances to gain muscle while losing fat, like, that just sounds like super awkward, right? And I'm already awkward enough, so I'm like, nah, we're gonna go with 4 ways, especially since I can't get my hair cut. We're gonna go with 4 ways. I think that has a better ring to it, so that's what we're gonna roll with. And so, as always, man, if you guys have questions or comments or whatever, just drop them on whatever platform you happen to be watching, and I will make sure that I get to them, as soon as it's over. We're not weaving the comments in while I'm live just yet, because I can't handle that many things at once. But one day, I think we'll be able to do it. All right, so here we go, man. This is what I kind of said. This is bodybuilder's mecca. This is the Holy Grail, right? Whether you're a competitive bodybuilder or a recreational bodybuilder, right? This is basically the goal of any physique enthusiast. You want to gain muscle or lose fat. I would argue that 100% of the time you are doing one of those 2 things, right? Again, if you're a physique enthusiast, right? If your goal is sport specific, if your goal is performance driven only, that's very, very different. That's a unique category. I'm talking about those of us that we're really just in this for physique development. We're really in this for the aesthetics of the sport, right? We're trying to gain muscle or lose fat. So, naturally, I would like to know, all right, Jim, how about gaining muscle and losing fat, brother? Like, can you help me do these 2 things at the same time? I think I can. And I'm going to give you 4, like I said earlier, scenarios where this can be done. So let's go ahead and dive into those 4 scenarios. But before we do, to build up the drama just a little bit more, we got to do this, man. It would be super disingenuous of me not to bring this up. We talked about this last week. So last week on the shred, we talked about how to find your maintenance calories, right? I feel like it was a really valuable session. My mom even emailed me afterwards and said, Jim, that was great. I'm really glad you did that. So obviously it was really good stuff. What I want you guys to do is go back and check that guy out because it's 25 minutes. And we talked about this, right? When you're finding your maintenance calories, if you try to gain muscle and lose fat at the same time, it's like going into your backyard and seeing 2 rabbits and trying to catch them both simultaneously. So let's make sure that we lay out the groundwork with this foundational principle. It just makes a lot more sense for us to go after 1 rabbit at a time. Right? We're in a caloric surplus, that's where we target muscle gain. We're in a caloric deficit, that's where we target fat loss. Now, of course, you have the fat gain and the muscle loss components that come along with those, 2, scenarios, those 2 states of being, right? Caloric surplus, caloric deficit. That's part of the cost of doing business, right? That's part of the territory. You really can't avoid that to some degree. But if you're going to focus on muscle gain, you probably want to be in a surplus. If you're going to focus on fat loss, you probably want to be in a deficit. Obviously, you can't be in both at the same time, right? It doesn't take, mathematical wizardry for us to understand, all right, I can't be both above my maintenance calories and below my maintenance calories at the same time, right? That would be very difficult to do. If you can figure out how to do that, then you need to let me know. Let us all know down in the comments below because that would be the most valuable thing anyone would hear tonight. But are there still times where we could at least, theoretically, if not practically, catch both of those rabbits? There are actually 4 scenarios that are going to apply to many of us out there where this can happen, where these 2 things can happen simultaneously. So that's what I want to talk about for the next 15 minutes or so. All right, so scenario 1. And these are not going to surprise you, I don't think, right? I'm not splitting the atom tonight. Right? Like, we're not going to do anything that you've never heard of, but hopefully I can package it up in such a way that you're like, all right, like, that makes sense. And that, you leave feeling, a little inspired, a little motivated. So scenario 1, you are a noob, right? You've probably heard of the Newbie gains, right? Obviously with an S because you haven't earned the Z yet. But during this phase, you can easily add muscle while losing fat, right? When you are brand new to the gym, right? When you are brand new to the gym, you've never trained seriously before, I tell you, you can walk in there, you can do everything wrong. You can have no clue what you're supposed to do. You could have no purpose, you could have no direction. You can bang your head against the wall for 6 months and you will grow and you will get shredded simultaneously. It's going to happen. This is just a product of the whole stimulus being so brand new to your body that your body's like, whoa, man, this is crazy, right? And so all of a sudden, the muscle fibers start to expand, the muscle, the muscle cells start to grow, the fat cells start to shrink. These 2 things happen simultaneously, and you can probably enjoy this period for 6 to 12 months, generally speaking, right? That's a pretty long time. So I would strongly encourage, and I'm going to give you guys at the very end tonight, I'm going to give you guys a super practical takeaway. Right? So whether you're in one of these scenarios or you're not in one of these scenarios, I want you guys to walk away with something like I do every Thursday night, with something that you can use and implement right away. So I'm going to give you guys literally a tactical roadmap for how to, gain muscle while losing fat, even if you're not in one of these scenarios. So that may seem kind of impossible, but you just got to tune in to kind of see where I'm going with that. But if you are a noob, if you've just started, if this is brand new to you, what you need to do is you need to not overthink it. What you need to do is you need to just go in there, you need to train, you need to eat healthy food. I strongly think that you should track your macros, and you should, probably put yourself in a caloric deficit if you are targeting fat loss primarily. But even though you'll be in a deficit, and we're going to talk about this in a few minutes, there's a really, really high likelihood that you will still be able to gain muscle because your muscles will be so, they'll have to adapt to something brand new, right? Your biceps have never done a curl before. Your chest has never done a bench press before. Your legs have never done a squat before. Not a formal squat, right? And so as a result of that, even if you are in a deficit, you're going to be able to grow a little bit and build some new muscle fiber. And that's pretty cool, man. That's really cool. So that's scenario 1. You are a noob. Scenario 2 is you're obese. Scenario 2 is you got a long way to go. Now, you might be super discouraged by that fact, right? You might be feeling really disappointed by the fact that you are really far away from your goal. Now, hey, I said this on the front end, and those of you that have followed my content, for a while, you already know this, so I'm not going to belabor this point. But I'm, sharing this slide with you all from experience. Like, I know exactly what that feels like because I lived that life. I know exactly what it feels like to feel discouraged and disappointed and deflated and feel like you're never going to get there and have no idea how to go forward. I know exactly what all that feels like. That was my entire childhood. That was my entire young adulthood, right? That was basically into my early 20s when I discovered and kind of found competitive bodybuilding is when things started to take, a turn for me. But I'm here to encourage you. If you are really far away from your goal, don't be discouraged. Don't be discouraged for 1,000 reasons. One of which is this: you will gain muscle and lose fat simultaneously, probably for a long time. And this is simply the product of you have so far to go, right? You have so far to get to your target, 60 pounds, 80 pounds, 100 pounds, 50 pounds. The number doesn't matter, but it's a big number, right? You want to make a really, really drastic change in your life. Then, hey, man, get after it. Hey, man, get in there. Put in the work and get it done. What's going to happen in the very beginning, again, likely for a while, months, could even be over a year, you're going to be gaining muscle and losing fat simultaneously. Now, obviously, you're going to be really far away from your goal, right? So you're not going to really be able to see the product of all your efforts in the mirror necessarily. But trust me, it is working behind the scenes. And you don't even have to trust me. This is actually something that's been pretty well documented in the research. There was a study, and I'll link to this down below. It's actually already linked on YouTube and Facebook. I don't have enough characters on Twitter, so I couldn't do it on Twitter. But so there was a study that is really, really interesting to me. It was in I think 1993, so it's a little bit dated, right? It's not super new or super current, but it was in 1993, and the researchers took 14 females, so it was only 14. Right, so you don't quite have the statistical power that you might have with, larger populations. But the researchers took 14 obese women, and they split them into 2 groups. They had one group not weight train. They had the other group weight train. Both groups were given a liquid diet, so caloric deficit, but it was all liquid for 90 days. And here's what the researchers found. Both groups lost weight. Both groups lost fat, and as you can imagine, a lot of fat. But what was really fascinating to the researchers, and it really speaks directly to this point, the group of women that did not weight train did not increase their muscle mass at all. So they lost a bunch of fat. They probably felt great about themselves, and they looked a lot better and were 5 times healthier. I mean, a bunch of positive results. But the women who weight trained, not only did they lose a lot of fat, but they also built muscle. The researchers actually went in and they measured the cross-sectional areas of the muscle fibers. And they found, increased areas, expanded areas, clearly evidence of muscle growth. And so that's really cool, man. So if you're really far away from where you want to be, hey, don't be discouraged, man. Don't be discouraged. One foot after the other, one foot in front of the other, one step at a time. You can do it. I know you can do it because I've done it myself. And so trust me, if I can do it, you can do it. And, the research is on your side. My experience is on your side. A lot of other people's experiences is on your side in that you can gain muscle and lose fat at the same time. And that's pretty cool. All right, so scenario 3. Oh, that's not what I wanted to do. That's what I wanted to do. So scenario 3 is you are untrained. So, maybe like that quarantine life where, you haven't trained seriously in a while, right? Now, I think you can train pretty seriously in the quarantine with bands and dumbbells and whatever. But, I respect the fact that some of us right now, that's not the first thing on our minds. And I totally get that. I mean, I have a newborn little girl who is, Amelia is only 6.5 weeks old. And I got to be honest, it's been a bit of a challenge for me to get my training in consistently. I've done my best, but, other things in my life have taken precedent over, bodybuilding. But whether it's quarantine or not, whether it's lockdown or not, whether it's stay-at-home order or not, if you're untrained, if you haven't trained seriously in a while, then very similar to newbie gains, you can actually expect a period when you get back in the swing of things where you will gain muscle and you will lose fat simultaneously. As your body kind of, kicks back into gear, right? As the muscle memory kicks in and, the muscle growth resumes and some fat loss, resumes, those two things can oftentimes happen together. Now, how long can they happen together for? How long can you expect this to last? It's not really as dependable or as clear as the newbie gains. The newbie gains, generally speaking, about 6 to 12 months, right? That's a pretty wide range. I can understand that. But there's a lot of factors that go, into that, like genetics, how hard you're training, and just a bunch of things. Similarly, if you're untrained, right, it kind of depends on how untrained you are. Like, have you just taken a couple months off? Like, that's very different than, hey, Jim, I haven't been in the gym since 1995, right? That's pretty untrained. Like, your body's probably just back into newbie mode. So you probably have 12 months on the horizon of doing both simultaneously. But if we're only talking about, a 6-week quarantine or a 10-week quarantine or, a 6-month quarantine, then, it's probably a little bit different. You're probably not going to be able to gain muscle and lose fat simultaneously, for that long of a period. Maybe only 4 weeks, 6 weeks, 2 months, 3 weeks. I mean, whatever the case may be, right? And so that's kind of our third scenario is for those of you that are untrained. Hey, let me know in the comments below if you don't mind, being publicly shamed for this. Have you let your training slide a little bit in the quarantine? Like, have you found it difficult, right? I just openly admitted that I have found it to be quite difficult to train consistently in the quarantine. And I'm using Amelia as a crutch. I'm using her as an excuse, but it's an excuse, right? I own up to that. I take ownership of that. So let me know. Are you guys also struggling down below? Let's come together and let's all kind of bask in each other's sorrows. Bask in sorrow. No, you probably don't bask in sorrows. Let's all drown in each other's sorrows. Maybe we'll do that. Scenario 3, man, this ship's going down fast. Scenario 3. Scenario 4, here we go, vitamin S. Oh, yeah. So I saved this one for last. Good old vitamin S. Man, if you're enhanced, it's a different game, man. It's a different game with different rules. Now, I can say I have never taken steroids. I have never even come close to taking steroids. I have no desire to take steroids. But I've known a number of people who have taken steroids or who are taking steroids. And, I have nothing but respect for those individuals. I don't look down on somebody because they, choose to shop at a different aisle at the supplement store. Like that's perfectly fine. That's a personal decision. But talking with these individuals, basically every single one of them, they've all basically said, Jim, it's just different, man. It's easier. It's easier. It's more effective, right? And when I think about that, like logically, I'm like, I would hope it would be, because if it wasn't, why are you, taking these drugs, right? I mean, think about it logically. Like if this didn't really help give you an edge, however you define an edge, I actually don't know very much about steroids, but I know some of the popular ones like, clenbuterol and, Winstrol, and that's about it. That's about all I know. But those are two of the more popular ones, at least popular ones in like 2005. I don't know if they're still popular. But anyway, it's like if these things weren't giving you a significant edge, like why even bother? It doesn't even make any sense. But just talking one-on-one with some of these individuals, it's like, yeah, it just, everything becomes a lot easier. Everything is more effective. You recover a lot faster. So you can just do a lot more work in a shorter period of time, which obviously is going to allow you to, really build up a lot of momentum with your training. And so it's just a different game, man. It's just a different game. So, if you yourself are taking vitamin S or are thinking about taking vitamin S, I mean, just to let you know at least part of my angle when it comes to that, like, yeah, it's going to help you a lot. It's going to help you, gain muscle and lose fat at the same time. And I don't think that should surprise anybody because, again, I mean, if it didn't do that, why would you be taking, these instruments? So those are the 4 scenarios where you can gain muscle and lose fat at the same time. So I'd love to know what you guys think about that down below. Let me know. Any comments are welcome. Some of us, though, are maybe a little bit more seasoned, right? Some of us are thinking, Jim, I don't really fall into any one of those four categories, right? I think a lot of us probably do fall into one of those four categories. And if we don't now, we will at some point in the near future. So, hopefully you can kind of file this away and keep it, in the back of your mind to remember that, hey, if I get back into this, either, I'm untrained or, my body weight fluctuates, much higher than I would like or whatever, you might be in a scenario where you will be able to gain muscle and lose fat at the same time. All right, that's pretty cool. But what if you're seasoned, right? What if you've been training really seriously for a while? What if you don't fall into one of these four categories? Can you gain muscle and lose fat simultaneously? I don't think so. I genuinely don't think so. I think you need to chase one rabbit. I think you need to chase one rabbit. If you are a seasoned lifter, if you are an experienced fitness enthusiast, and you've been consistent for at least several years in a row, and this has just become part of your life, you don't need me to tell you this. You don't need me to say what I'm about to say, but I'm going to say it anyway. It's really hard for you to make progress. You know that, right? It's really hard for you to gain muscle, or it's really hard for you to lose fat, right? If you're naturally kind of an endomorph, like I am, where I store fat very easily, then it's really hard for me to lose fat. It's not that difficult for me to gain muscle per se in terms of just body mass. I don't know how much of that is actual pure muscle, but just body mass, not that hard for me to do. But if you're more of an ectomorph, then it's probably really easy for you to lose fat, right? Your metabolism is much higher, your NEAT is probably much higher, and it's very difficult for you to keep weight on. It's very difficult for you to build muscle. And so you already know, if you're experienced, it's really hard for you to even just catch that one rabbit. So I would strongly encourage you to just focus on that one rabbit. Because the biggest mistake that I see people make, that I've seen people make, that I see people make today, and that I somewhat embarrassingly have made myself for many, many years, is trying to do both at the same time. Trying to optimize my program so well to where everything is in line that I am going to chase and catch both rabbits. That has led to my spinning my wheels for many, many months, sometimes several years on end. And I still see it with my own two eyes. People in the gym, even, some people that I talk with, some athletes I've gotten to know, and just people that, obviously with F Cubed and the fitness arm of F Cubed, I obviously talk to and come in contact with a lot of people that are very interested in fitness. And so it's just a common thing. I would strongly encourage you not to do that. Here is a better way to approach this. And here's what's cool. On the next slide, I'm going to give you guys a really, really tactical strategy that you can implement right now. It doesn't matter if you are a seasoned lifter or if you do fall into one of these four categories. Not necessarily category 4, because vitamin S is kind of its own thing, right? But the first three categories, here's what all of us can employ, and we're going to end up with results that we're very, very happy with, right? It's going to look a little bit different because depending on where we're at, but here it is. So without further ado, so here's what I suggest you guys all consider. A very realistic recomp, right? A little body recomposition for you guys. Here's what I would do. Again, if fat loss is your primary focus, if fat loss is your number one goal, but you'd love to gain muscle too, then this is what I would do. If your number one goal right now is gaining muscle, then it's a little bit different, right? If your number one goal right now is gaining muscle and you're in one of the first three scenarios, brand new, really overweight or untrained, then you probably don't have to overthink it too much. But if you're more of a seasoned lifter, then I would strongly encourage you to get into a caloric surplus and pay your dues and put in the reps and do the work and gain the muscle. Don't try to cheat the system because you're just going to end up spinning your wheels. But if your main goal is fat loss first and you'd love to try to gain some muscle, here's what you should do. I would get yourself in a slight caloric deficit. And of course, again, you can use the equations and the calculations and the principles we laid out last week with how to calculate your maintenance calories to figure out exactly how to do that. I literally laid out step by step, play by play, exactly how to do that. Get yourself into a slight caloric deficit, 100 to 300 calories, very, very modest, very modest. What's very likely going to happen for you if you're a seasoned lifter, you're going to lose fat because you're in a caloric deficit. But if you do this slowly and gradually, which the slight caloric deficit is going to do, you're not doing things too extreme, you're taking your time, you're exercising patience. Here's what's going to happen. you're probably going to keep most or maybe all of the muscle that's on your frame. So you know what that looks like in the end? That basically has the same result as gaining muscle while losing fat. It just looks a little bit different because technically you won't be gaining any muscle. Technically you'll just be maintaining your muscle. But I can, again, speaking from experience, like when I'm getting in competition shape and what have you, just losing fat, I look completely different, right? And, you know, I'm obviously leaner because I'm losing fat, but I always, every single time, and you will too, you will look so much bigger. Even though you may be 20 pounds lighter, you may be 30 pounds lighter, you may be 40 or 45 or 50 pounds lighter. You're going to look enormous because you've stripped away all the body fat and you're unveiling, you know, the muscle that you do have. And so if you've been able to, you know, take your time with this, be gradual, be patient, then you're going to be able to enjoy the fruits of that labor, that slow, gradual labor, where you're losing fat slowly, consistently, just like we talked about last week with, you know, starting with your maintenance calories, and then you keep the same amount of muscle. Now, if you're in one of the first three scenarios and you're looking for a place to start, I would start here too, right? You could maybe be a little bit more aggressive with the caloric deficit, like maybe go up to 400 or 500 calories, right? So you can kind of expedite the fat loss, you know, angle of it a little bit. I have no problem with that. Because you're brand new, because you're, you know, obese, because you're untrained, you're probably going to be able to gain some muscle along the way too. So you don't really have to overthink that. But if you are more seasoned, you're going to have to be a little bit more nuanced with the approach. And so, you know, this is exactly what I would do. If I was in a situation where I was wanting to gain muscle while losing fat, if you're in one of those three scenarios, then you're good to go. If you're a more seasoned lifter, you know, this slide right here is exactly what I would do. This is exactly what I do when I do. This is exactly what I do when I do. But when I'm getting ready for a competition, this is exactly how I start, and it's my tried and true, and it literally never steers me wrong. So here's your action item, and I'll let you guys go tonight. So if you're new, untrained, or really far from your goal, man, you're naturally going to add muscle while you lose fat. You know, so in that scenario, don't overthink it, right? Just tin cup it, man. Just grip it and rip it, right? You don't even have to worry too much about it. But if you're not, then a far better goal is keeping muscle while you lose fat, which is exactly what you can do there on that previous slide. So that's the shred tonight, guys, man. You know, I was excited to give this one to you. Hopefully I gave you guys some value. Hopefully kind of brought some things into your fitness world that maybe you hadn't considered before, or, you know, maybe that inspires you or motivates you to get going, or maybe it gives you, you know, that tactical framework that we laid out there, you know, on that previous slide. Any one of the above would be really amazing. I'm just, you know, as always, man, I'm just so super humbled that you guys choose to spend your Thursday nights with me. If you watch live, that'd be great. If you don't watch live, if you catch it on replay, you know, you're no less awesome. You're investing your precious time with me, and I'm really, really thankful for that. So if you want to share this wherever you're at, that would be amazing. If I can ever help in any way, just reach out to me, man. You know, you could drop a comment below this video, and that's probably the easiest way to ask a question related to this content. But if it's something unrelated to this content, that might be, you know, related to fitness in general. Obviously, I'm a finance professional too. Obviously, I love Jesus. And so any of the above, if you guys want to talk about any of those, man, I'm very happy to do that. Just J Schultz F30 across the board on social media. And then jschultzf3@gmail if you want to shoot me an email. And then, guys, check out that free training, man. The 5 secrets straight from the bodybuilding stage. I'm starting to put it together already. And I think it's going to be pure fire, man. So you can register already down below in the description or in the tweet on Twitter. And I don't know, man. It's about 8:30. I think that's it. I think we can take a breath and we can shut this thing down. So you guys are the best. I hope you guys got a little bit of value from this, and I'll see you guys next week.